Sunny meets Diane at the Café Sherry. She knows Drew was shot. Is she defending him, Carly, or Michael? He actually called her to discuss Judge Heron and Drew's claim that she was bribed. Diane notes that Heron was always a fair judge, which is why she was surprised when she gave Michael full custody, implying that she may have been bought off. Sunny implies that Jen Sidwell may be responsible for her murder. Who is Michael's alibi? Michael, who is visiting the hospital for routine blood work, speaks briefly with Liz about Drew and Willow. Drew has been told that he is critical but stable, and she has been keeping an eye on Willow. While waiting for his appointment, Michael reads Lulu's article about Drew and notices the photo of Drew taking body shots off Jacinda. He recalls going to the Port Charles Grill, and lo and behold, the blonde woman he was looking for the other day, and who serves as his alibi, is none other than Jacinda. She informed him that she had recently returned from a dream vacation in Australia because she had run out of money. Lulu's got questions. Lulu approaches Willow to discuss Drew off the record and whether she knows who would want to kill him. Willow notices Michael across the street and remarks that Michael and his father are dangerous individuals, and Drew has made a number of enemies. Liz later checks in with Willow, but Felicia interrupts. According to Felicia, Martin has appointed Willow as Scout's custodial guardian. Felicia says she can refuse, but Willow is eager to take the girl, remembering the custody agreement she and Drew signed before the wedding. Nina arrives at Portia's office, only to hear bad news from the doctor. It appears that Drew will survive. They discuss how strange it is that Drew died an hour after they spoke at the bar. Nina reveals she has an alibi, Willow, which Portia clearly does not believe but describes as a fortunate coincidence for her. Nina points out that her hatred for Drew is public knowledge, whereas Portia's is private, which is fortunate for her. Lulu interrupts, hoping to get a statement from the doctor regarding the rumor that Drew targeted Stella. Portia refuses to comment, except to say Stella is an excellent employee. Lulu then brings up Drew, but Portia makes no comment. Another setback for Alexis and her family at Alexis' home. Molly goes to family court to try to get Drew's restraining orders lifted so that Scout can stay with them. After her sister leaves, Christina tells her mother that bringing Scout here is a bad idea because Rick could be tied up with a ball gag in his mouth. Alexis claims they don't have many options. Molly soon returns with bad news. Willow has been appointed Scout's guardian, and the restraining orders remain in effect. Alexis fumes, but decides to pack a bag for Scout because that's all she can do. Alexis leaves, and Christina admits to Molly that she said some nasty things to Willow, so she doubts Nurse Tate will let Scout see them. In Portia's office, she and Nina both insist that they are not responsible for Drew's death. They are astounded when Jacinda appears at the doctor's door. What will happen to Colette? Jack is sick of Colette's nagging and has had her relocated to the Algerian offices. Anna listens at the door as Colette explains that shipping her out does not change the fact that he lost 2 agents, and she will file a report with his boss. After Colette leaves, Anna storms in and asks Jack if one of those agents is Joss. Jack claims the operation encountered a glitch, but he believes the mission will be completed successfully. Jack shifts the conversation to Drew being shot. He claims Carly was with him when they received the news and that she remained with him throughout the night. Anna questions why he summoned her here. Anna fumes to Jack GH. Jack claims he has changed his mind about calling her and does not want to add to her already heavy burden by knowing information she cannot reveal. It appears that the entire point was for Jack to give Carly an alibi. Anna snaps at him, saying she doesn't like being used and that he now owes her. Will Joss and Vaughn die? At the Five Poppies, Vaughn and Joss are tied together in their small room. He wishes she had run when he jumped the guard. Joss realizes she blew the opportunity and missed her chance to warn the WSB. Vaughn is more concerned that she might die. She wonders if he would have truly sacrificed his life for hers. We don't receive an answer. Jason returns to the resort, and Pascal is delighted to see him, offering him his old room. Jason asks if Greta is still present, and Pascal confirms that she is. Jason enters his room and is immediately shot at by an unknown man. Jason kills him and disposes of the body in an undisclosed location, most likely his bathroom. He arms himself and walks out. Back in Port Charles, Colette is in Jack's empty office, telling someone on the phone that the code they were given for the safe does not work. Pascal proceeds to inform Jocelyn Vaughn that the code they provided him did not work, and they are about to drown in a boating accident. He says, "Bon voyage." Meanwhile, Jason enters Britt's room and discovers that she has hidden a note for him, detailing where to meet her and providing him with an entrance code. Back in Jack's office, Colette is still on the phone and appears to have been directed to search Jack's office for any information about Dalton. She discovers nothing and informs them that they must rely on someone else to provide them with what they require. If she was speaking with Pascal, this seems like poor editing, unless we are to assume he called her back. In the final moments of the show, Sonny asks Diane to get him information on Heron and Sidwell, but she can't because Jens is also a client of the firm. She says he needs to get that information on his own, and quickly, because the bribe will be discovered, and everyone will suspect him or Michael. At the hospital, Michael finds Lulu and inquires about the sex worker mentioned in the article she wrote, as he needs to find her. Portia and Nina are unsure of Jacinda's intentions. She needed money and thought they could assist her because they were friends. Willow tells Alexis that she adores Scout and will take excellent care of her. Felicia interrupts again, revealing that Lila's kids has called and Scout is missing. Molly scolds Christina at home for speaking so loudly. Molly then receives a call from Cody but ignores it. She sets down her phone and misses his 911 text. Obviously, Scott has gone to the QS. Pascal informs Vaughn and Joss that, unfortunately, it has been determined that the two of them are still useful, so they will live for the time being. Brennan arrives at his office with a gun, arrests Colette, and demands she tell him who she really works for, or else. Finally, Jason goes to the location Britt specified, which is her lab. General Hospital spoilers for Monday, September 8th, reveal that Jason Morgan's rescue mission will fail while missing Scout Quartermain is located. Jack Brennan will also sound the alarm, so here's what GH fans can expect. Ava Jerome will appear tense as she tells Christina Corinthos Davis that they must deal with this right away. A crisis will arise, and Ava will do her best to deal with it. In the meantime, Molly Lansing Davis will respond to Cody Bell's 911 message. Cody has been calling and texting, so Molly will eventually realize there is an emergency and demand answers over the phone. Scout, who went missing from camp, most likely ended up at the Quartermain stables. Cody will look after Scout until she can be picked up, allowing him to repair some of the recent damage to Molly. As Alexis and Willow Tate continue to deal with Scout's disappearance, they will wonder where she went. It won't be long before Molly calls with news of Cody finding Scout at the stables. Anna Devane will work with Harrison Chase and Dante Falconeri at the PCPD to identify some key suspects. Chase will speculate on some possible connections in this case during the investigation meeting. In Brennan's office, he has just cornered Colette Moreau with a gun, threatening her and demanding answers about who she really works for. Colette will do her best to reach an agreement with Brennan, but he may not be in the mood to negotiate. Whatever the case, Brennan will eventually make an urgent phone call and shout that their agent's cover has been blown. Brennan will be concerned that Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks are already dead, but he will continue to work hard to save them in the event that they survive. Jocelyn will attempt to manipulate an employee at the Five Poppies Resort. Jocelyn will question whether this job is worth their lives and may warn that the WSB will retaliate with deadly consequences. Now that Jason has entered the lab, he plans to make a promise to Britt Westbourne. Jason will assure Britt that he will not hurt her and promise to get her out of there. Unfortunately, Jason's rescue will be thwarted as new dangers emerge. Britt may inform Jason of Jocelyn and Vaughn's captivity, but rescuing them, as well as Britt, will be difficult. According to General Hospital spoilers, there will be more twists at the Five Poppies Resort, so don't miss out on the chaos. CDL is the place to go for great General Hospital spoilers, news, and updates, so make us your go-to GH source. Jason Morgan adjusted the collar of his leather jacket, the familiar weight of his gun tucked against his ribs as he stepped outside into the cool Port Charles night. The call had come in just after midnight. Britt Westbourne was in trouble, and the urgency in her voice was clear. She hadn't provided much information, only a cryptic request for assistance and an address on the outskirts of town, near the old warehouse district. Jason did not hesitate. Britt had been a friend and ally through many storms, and he was always available when she needed him. No questions were asked. The streets were quiet as he rode his motorcycle through the city, the rumble of the engine breaking the silence. His mind was sharp and focused, already calculating the angles, potential threats, escape routes, and the like. Britt was not one to complain, so whatever awaited him at that address would not be simple. The warehouse loomed ahead, casting a hulking shadow on the moonlit sky. Its rusted metal walls and broken windows gave it the appearance of being forgotten by time, but Jason knew better than to believe appearances. Port Charles had a way of concealing danger in plain sight. He parked his bike a block away and moved silently through the shadows, his boots barely making a sound against the cracked pavement. The address Britt had given him was specific: Warehouse 17, back entrance. As he approached, he looked around for signs of movement. Nothing. No cars, no guards, and no obvious traps. But the hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a warning he'd learned not to dismiss. Inside the warehouse, there was a maze of crates and rusted machinery, and the air was thick with oil and dust. Jason moved purposefully, his gun drawn but low, his senses alert to every creak and groan in the building. Britt's message had been clear: she was in over her head, possibly due to a failed transaction. He didn't know the specifics, but he didn't have to. His job was to get her out, no matter what it took. A faint sound, a muffled shout, came from deep within, and Jason's pace quickened. He came around a corner and froze. In a dimly lit clearing among the crates, Jocelyn Jackson and Vaughn Anderson were tied to chairs, their faces bruised and their eyes wide with fear. Jocelyn's gaze locked on Jason's, and relief filled her face. "Jason, thank God," she said, her voice hoarse. Vaughn, on the other hand, appeared to be putting on a brave face, but the sweat on his brow revealed otherwise. Two men stood guard with their backs to Jason, oblivious to his presence. They were big, armed, and obviously not amateurs. Jason's jaw tightened. This was not what he had expected, but he wasn't about to abandon Joss and Vaughn to their fate. Britt's absence bothered him, though. Where was she? Had she set him up, or was she in deeper trouble than he had suspected? He did not have time to dwell on it. One of the guards turned and saw Jason duck behind a crate. "Who is there?" The man barked, his hand reaching for the gun at his hip. Jason did not wait for him to figure it out. He lunged and knocked the guard to the ground before he could draw. The second guard spun around, but Jason was faster and disarmed him with a quick kick and a well-timed punch. Within seconds, both men were down and groaning, but still alive. Jason did not believe in unnecessary body counts, especially when he could avoid them. Jocelyn was already speaking when Jason cut her free, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It was a setup, Jason. They grabbed us to entice you here. Britt, she is not even here. They used her name to get you to come." Vaughn nodded, rubbing his wrists where the ropes had bitten into his skin. "They have something big planned. Something about Michael. They kept talking about him, saying he's involved with some bad people." The mention of Michael Corinthos, his best friend and practically brother, made Jason's blood run cold. Michael had been acting strangely lately, distant, and avoiding questions about his business dealings. Jason chalked it up to stress. Running ELQ and dealing with the Corinthos family legacy was no easy task. But this? It sounded like something else entirely. What have they said about Michael? Jason inquired, his voice low and controlled, but with an edge that made Jocelyn flinch. They said he's got an alibi that's going to blow up in his face, Vaughn replied. Something about a witness, someone who is going to speak. Jocelyn added, they mentioned a name, Rick Lansing. Rick Lansing said he has evidence that could bring Michael down. The name hit Jason like a punch in the stomach. Rick, Sonny's half-brother, had always been trouble, a snake who thrived on causing chaos. If Rick was involved, whatever was going on was personal and dangerous. Jason helped Vaughn get to his feet, his mind racing. He needed to find Britt, get Joss and Vaughn safe, and figure out what Michael was up to before it was too late. You two, stay close, he ordered, leaving no room for disagreement. We're getting out of here, but we're not done yet. The trio moved through the warehouse, Jason leading the way with his gun ready. Every shadow seemed to pulse with danger, and every sound represented a potential threat. Jocelyn remained close, her usual bravado dampened by the reality of what they had just escaped. Vaughn was jittery, his eyes darting around as if he expected another ambush at any moment. Jason could not blame him. The air felt heavy and charged, like the calm before the storm. Outside, the night was still quiet, but Jason knew better than to rely on it. He summoned Joss and Vaughn to his bike, instructing them to ride to a safe house he had on the outskirts of town. Don't stop for anyone, he told Joss, handing her the keys. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. Joss paused, her gaze drawn to his. How about you? What about Britt? Jason's expression did not change. I will find her. As the motorcycle's roar faded into the distance, Jason returned his attention to the warehouse. Britt was still out there, and if this was a setup, she was either a victim or a participant. Regardless, he required answers. He slipped back inside, moving like a ghost, his senses acute. The guards he dispatched were still out cold, but he wasn't taking chances. He bound their hands with zip ties from his jacket and dragged them into a corner. If they awoke, they would not be causing problems anytime soon. A faint light flickered from a room at the far end of the warehouse, and Jason approached it. The door was ajar, and inside he discovered what appeared to be an office, papers strewn across a desk, a laptop open and softly humming. He scanned the documents quickly, focusing on names and dates. Michael's name stood out, linked to a series of suspicious transactions, offshore accounts, shell companies, and other red flags. Rick's signature appeared at the bottom of one page. Jason's stomach twisted. Michael had always been too careful to get involved in something this sloppy. Unless he was framed. The thought struck Jason hard, but it made sense. Rick had a motive, years of resentment toward Sonny and everyone close to him. If he could defeat Michael, it would be devastating for both Sonny and Jason. But where does Britt fit into this? Was she a pawn, or did she betray him? A soft click behind him caused Jason to spin, gun raised. Britt stood in the doorway, face pale and hands trembling. Jason, she said softly, I didn't know. I swear, I had no idea. Her eyes were wide and desperate, but Jason did not lower his gun. Not yet. Start talking, he said, his voice as steel. And don't leave anything out. Britt's story unfolded in fits and starts. Rick approached her and said he needed her help with a medical emergency involving one of his clients. Of course, it was a lie, but by that point, she was too far gone. Rick had used her phone to send the message to Jason, knowing he'd be running. The plan was to trap Jason and use him as leverage against Michael. But Britt had managed to flee, hiding in the warehouse until she could find a way to alert him. Jason listened with an unreadable expression. He wanted to believe her. Britt had never given him any reason to doubt her before, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. "Where is Rick?" he asked, his voice low. Britt shakes her head. "He is not here. He has a meeting with someone important tonight. I heard him mention something about a shipment arriving at the docks." Of course. If Rick was going after Michael, he'd need something big to seal the deal: drugs, weapons, anything that could link Michael to a crime he didn't commit. Jason grabbed the papers from the desk and stuffed them in his jacket. "You're coming with me," he told Britt. "If you're lying, you won't like what happens next." They dashed past the warehouse and toward the docks. The Port Charles waterfront was a maze of cranes and containers, the ideal location to conceal something or someone. Jason's mind was racing as he pieced together the fragments of his knowledge. Michael's alibi, whatever it was crucial. If Rick had a witness ready to tear it apart, Jason needed to locate them first. And if a shipment arrived, Rick would use that as leverage to bury Michael. Even at this hour, the docks were busy. Workers moved crates, their shouts drowned out by the hum of machinery. Jason and Britt remained low, slipping between containers, their eyes searching for any sign of Rick or his men. A small group of 3 men gathered near the water's edge, one of whom was unmistakably Rick Lansing. His sharp features and smug grin were unmistakable, even from a distance. He was speaking with a man Jason didn't recognize, dressed in an expensive suit that looked out of place among the rough edges of the docks. Jason motioned for Britt to stay back as he approached, close enough to hear snippets of their conversation. "The shipment is on schedule," Rick said. "Once it arrives, Corinthos is done. The witness will seal it." The other man nodded, his face cold. "And Morgan? You said you handled him." Rick's grin spread. "He is taken care of." "Trust me," Jason said, gripping his gun tighter. He had no idea whether Rick was bluffing or genuinely believed Jason was out of the picture, but it didn't matter. He wasn't going to let Rick's plan get any further. He signaled Britt, who nodded and took out her phone, ready to call for help if things went wrong. Jason didn't expect to need it, but he wasn't taking chances. He moved like a predator, silent and precise, closing in on Rick's group. The third man, who appeared to be a hired muscle, never saw Jason coming. He was knocked down with a quick strike to the back of the head. Rick and the man in the suit spun around, but Jason was already on them, his gun pointed at Rick's chest. "Talk," he said, his voice dead quiet. "What's the shipment, and what about Michael's alibi?" Rick's smirk was unwavering, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You are too late, Jason. The shipment is already here. Michael was sentenced to life in prison due to his drug use." "What about the witness?" "They saw him at the wrong time and place." "His alibi is worthless," Jason said calmly. He had heard lies before, and Rick was full of them. But the man in the suit appeared nervous, his gaze darting to a nearby container. Jason followed his gaze, and there it was, a crate, slightly ajar, with plastic-wrapped packages spilling out. Drugs, just as Rick mentioned. Jason's thoughts raced. If Michael's alibi was shaky and this shipment was linked to him, it could bring down the entire Corinthos organization. "Where is the witness?" Jason demanded, moving closer to Rick. The man in the suit made a move, reaching inside his jacket, but Jason was quicker. A single shot rang out, and the man collapsed, clutching his shoulder. Rick's smirk finally faded. "You're making a mistake, Jason," he said, his tone tight. "You can't stop this." "Maybe not," Jason said, "but I can stop you." He grabbed Rick, twisting his arm behind his back and forcing him to kneel. Britt stepped forward, her phone in hand and already dialing. "I'm calling Spinelli," she explained. He can track down the witness and figure out who is behind this. Jason nodded, his gaze still fixed on Rick. Do it. Find out where Michael is. If he's in trouble, we need to know right away. As Britt made the call, Jason's thoughts were already on the next step. The shipment needed to disappear quickly. He couldn't trust the cops, especially given Rick's connections. And the witness, whoever they were, had to be located before they could testify. Michael's life, and possibly his own, depended on it. Spinelli's voice crackled through Britt's phone, his usual manic energy balanced by concern. Stone cold, my friend, this is terrible. Really bad. The witness is someone close to Michael, who has been feeding Rick information for several weeks. I'm still digging, but it appears that they have a paper trail connecting Michael to the drugs. It's tight, Jason. Too tight. Jason clenched his jaw. Somebody close to Michael. That narrowed it down, but not sufficiently. He needed names, proof, and something to act on. Keep digging, he told Spinelli. And find me a location for Michael. Now. He looked at Rick, who was still on his knees, his expression a mix of defiance and fear. You're going to tell me everything, Jason said quietly and dangerously. Or you're not going to walk away from this. Rick laughed hollowly. Do you think you can scare me, Jason? You're out of your element. This isn't only about me. It's bigger than you can imagine. Jason did not respond. He did not need to. He had heard threats before, and they always ended the same way. He'd find the witness, destroy the shipment, and get to Michael before Rick's plan could be executed. And if Britt was telling the truth, if she truly supported him, she'd help him do it. If not, he would deal with it too. The night went on, the docks buzzing with tension as Jason attempted to unravel the web of lies and betrayal. Joss and Vaughn were safe for the time being, but Michael remained outside, caught in a trap that could destroy him. And Britt, Jason looked at her, her expression determined as she relayed Spinelli's updates. He wanted to trust her, but trust was a risky proposition in Port Charles. For the time being, he'd keep her close, his enemies closer, and do what he did best, protect those he cared about at any cost. The hours passed, each one bringing Jason closer to the truth, and a confrontation he couldn't escape. Rick's plan was unraveling, but the danger was not over. Somewhere out there, a witness held the key to Michael's fate, and Jason would find them even if it meant destroying Port Charles. The city had always been a battlefield, and Jason Morgan was no stranger to conflict. He'd fight for Michael, Britt, Joss and Vaughn, as well as the truth, because the truth was the only thing worth fighting for in Port Charles. Jason had planned every aspect of the rescue. He had planned the routes, anticipated Brennan's every countermove, and prepared for any complication. But as he stood in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Port Charles, his instincts told him something was wrong. The silence was too deep and unnatural, as if the entire place was holding its breath. He adjusted his grip on his gun, his mind racing, looking for threats he couldn't see. Inside, his heart pounded for one reason: Scout. Danny's younger sister, Drew's daughter, was the one person Jason had sworn to protect at any cost. The plan had been straightforward: infiltrate, retrieve, and flee without informing Brennan or his agents. However, Jason had underestimated Brennan's extensive network. What appeared to be a routine extraction mission quickly turned into something far darker and more dangerous than he had anticipated. Spinelli's voice came through his earpiece, low and tense. Stone cold, I see movement on the east wing, 2 heavily armed guards circling. I've hacked the security feeds, but you only have about 30 seconds before they realize we're inside the system. Jason didn't respond, his jaw tightening as he calculated his next move. He needed to get to the basement, where his intelligence indicated Scout was being held, but Brennan would not have made it so simple. Every hallway he passed felt like a trap waiting to be sprung, and every shadow like an enemy lying in wait. Then, without warning, a muffled scream echoed faintly from somewhere deeper inside the structure. Jason paused for a half-second before breaking into a sprint, his boots silent against the concrete floor. He approached a heavy steel door and forced it open, expecting to find Scout, but the room was empty. What he did find, however, sent shivers down his spine, a small pink jacket lying on the floor, which he recognized right away. Scout's jacket. Spinelli, Jason hissed into the communicator, crouching to retrieve it. She was here. But she's not anymore. Oh no, Spinelli whispered on the other end, panic creeping into his normally controlled voice. That means Brennan has moved her. This is bad, stone cold. This is extremely bad. Jason didn't need Spinelli to tell him that. If Brennan had known they were on their way, Scout was in even more danger than he realized. A deafening explosion shook the building, rattling the walls and knocking Jason into a stack of crates. Smoke filled the air, making it difficult to see. Someone had started the charges early. Through the haze, Jason could hear footsteps, fast, chaotic, and numerous. He ducked behind cover, his gun ready, but before he could fire, a cold and calculated voice rang out over the loudspeakers. You should have stayed out of this, Jason. Brennan's voice echoed throughout the building, like a curse. You're too late. Jason's jaw clenched, and every muscle tightened. Brennan wanted him rattled and distracted. But Jason was not about to break. Not now. Suddenly, another voice entered his earpiece, one he did not expect. It was Sam. Jason, please stop where you are. I'm looking at Scout. He froze in mid-step. Where? She is outside. Across the loading dock. I am watching through one of Brennan's hacked cameras. But Jason. Sam paused, her voice trembling slightly. There is someone with her. I believe Brennan is using her as bait. Jason's chest tightened. That changed everything. Brennan wanted Jason to come after Scout if she was out in the open, which meant walking straight into a trap. He walked silently down the corridor, his heart racing, until he reached the loading dock doors. He crouched and peered through a crack, and there she was, Scout, frozen beside one of Brennan's men, her tiny hands clutching a worn teddy bear, her eyes wide with terror. Brennan was out of sight, indicating that he was close. Too close. Jason's instincts told him to charge in, take the guy down, and grab Scout. But Brennan was 10 steps ahead, and Jason knew it. Instead, he signaled Spinelli to turn off the lights. In an instant, the entire dock went dark. Jason moved like a shadow, silent and quick, dispatching the first guard with devastating precision. But just as he reached Scout, another shot rang out, missing him by an inch. He spun around and came face to face with Brennan.